Message Talk Show is back again, back. Find the links on Master the Message and some links on the Message Talk Show on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Message Talk Show. It's Thursday morning, 11 o'clock. And what do you do at 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning? You get a cup of coffee, you get a cup of tea, and you listen to the Message Talk Show. Now, don't tell me you forgot this week. No, don't tell me, man. I've done enough advertising for you not to forget. So pick up that phone, call your friends, call your family, call your worst enemies. Yes, call them and get on the show. All right? Why? Because we have a guest in the show today, an amazing lady. You know, sometimes you meet people. I've always said this. Whenever you meet people, treat them like how you'd like to be treated, because you never know who's in the house. And around about 3 or 4 years ago, I met this lady at an event. Hey, I even interviewed this lady at an event. Amazing. She didn't know me from Adams, but you know what? She was a nice person, just doing a small business a favor. She did that interview. And 3 or 4 years later, she's on my show again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the talk show, the Message Talk Show, Sharniya Ferdinand.
Hi, thank you for having me. I was going to say, I really loved your intro. That was incredible.
You loved my intro. That's amazing.
Such high energy. I wasn't feeling that energetic, but now I'm like, yeah, bouncing.
You've got to feel, man, you've got to be high energy. I used to worry about my energy sometimes, right? I used to worry about my energy thinking, no, I can't do that. I can't do that on a show. Mm-hmm. And I came across this lady in America called Danielle Leslie. I went on a masterclass. Mm-hmm. And for 1 hour, she was pitching her business. She was talking and her energy was so high. I'm thinking, my God, any minute now she's going to fall over. Poor lady. But she opened her mouth and she filled it for 1 hour straight.
Wow.
That program has gone on to serve over 3,000 people across the world.
That's incredible.
3,000 people across the world. The testimonials are tremendous. Mm-hmm. So I don't apologize for my energy anymore, because I know what? We're here to bring change.
Should never apologize for your energy.
We're here to bring change. So ladies and gentlemen, let me just welcome you to the Message Talk Show. Again, Thursday, 11 o'clock. We believe that mission-centered individuals are the ones that are going to bring change to the world. And therefore, we interview passion and mission-centered individuals. And you know what? I just attract them now. Everywhere I go out, I just attract passion and mission-centered individuals. And you know what? I attract people who can talk. My God. When they open their mouths, they can't stop. I normally say the show is 30 minutes, but hey, after 25 minutes, they're warmed up and they can't stop. 40 minutes later, they're still talking. So today we're going to be in for a treat with Sharniya Ferdinand. Sharniya has been working with some of the biggest institutions in the UK, helping small businesses for the past decade. She'll be telling us exactly what she's been doing, how she's been doing it. And one of the major things I noted from what she sent me, that in 2017 she was she received the Women's Opal Award from her company, recognizing her contribution to women in business. She also received the Rising Star in Diversity by We Are the City. So you've been talking about diversity from a long time, Sharniya.
Well, yeah, but actually probably not that long, or not as long as some others. It's well, I wouldn't say I'm new to the game now, but it wasn't something that I ever really actively thought about. I grew up in a household where it was like, you can do anything you want, but you know, when it's that set out, you must go to university, you must study maths, English, science, you must be really good at those subjects. You go to university and then you can do anything you want. So I never really thought about any struggles or barriers necessarily for my own life. And it wasn't until I moved into business banking within the company I work for, that which would have been in 2000 and the end of 2015, sorry. And it was through that role that I was doing where I started networking more. I started being invited to a lot of women in business events and events focused around supporting female entrepreneurs. And it was kind of through just, even though you know that there are you know the way the world works in a general way, and you kind of understand that there are barriers because you grow up hearing that if you're this, it means you won't be able to get this, or if you're that, you might not be able to get access to that. But I hadn't really, I guess, properly thought about it. So when I started going to these female focused events that were talking about these are the barriers that women face, we need to support more women in business, it kind of, I guess, really clicked something for me. Obviously, being a woman, it really resonated with me. But then being a Black woman, I started to think, well, actually, there are other communities, not just from a gender perspective, that also face these barriers. And it made me start thinking more widely about diversity and how we support people who aren't, who I guess we would call underrepresented in certain spheres, and thinking about the unfairness of that and why that was. And so I became, I guess, really passionate about what more can I do. And at the time I was doing a role where it was focused around being able to connect people together, and specifically business owners together, connecting female business owners. But I started thinking, well, actually, it's not just about, I guess, female business owners. How can we connect more people from different ethnic minorities together? How can we connect LGBTQ plus business owners with each other and sort of really help people to strengthen those networks, but also to feel that they're in a safe space where, because other people have had similar experiences to them, they can really be open and honest and learn and share from each other. And it was kind of, I guess, my journey on this started late 2015, early 2016. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not been that long, but at the same time, it's long enough to know that it's time for a change.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not a very long time. Hey, this is a woman who's packing a lot in just short space of time, you know, packing so much in. So, and you've heard her already, man. She was on a roll just then. She was on a roll.
Sorry, I do talk for a while.
She couldn't stop. She was just ready to go. I think it's powerful to have women on the other side, promoting and inspiring women to start their businesses, to drive their businesses. What do you consider some of the challenges that small businesses are facing right now? It's, you know, we're in the middle of this pandemic that's been going on for some time now. What challenges do they face?
Some of the challenges, I would say, I mean, the pandemic in itself is a challenge for so many reasons. It's, I think as human beings, we talk about like being adaptable and being ready to change. But I do think that inherently we are quite like, we get set in our ways, especially the older you get, unfortunately. I won't give away how old I am, but the older you get, you do start getting used to your comforts, you get set in your ways, and you feel like my life feels comfortable, or it feels good. And then something that you completely didn't expect, like a global pandemic that no one really expected, comes along, and it's sort of shaken everything. Obviously, it's really affected people's mental health and well-being. It's really affected the way we work, the way we communicate with each other, how we even view that kind of, I guess, human connection. And so for that in itself is a massive thing. But I think what it's also done is some of the challenges that businesses were facing prior to the pandemic, it's kind of really exacerbated them. So things like business owners talk about, one of the biggest things is sort of access to networks, or knowing where to go, because for some people, they don't have ready-made networks. We don't grow up like round the dinner table talking with our parents necessarily about, oh, this is how being a business owner works, or this is what it means, or this is how you set yourself up financially to either, well, to go into the world of work, to go into business. And I think there's issues sometimes around understanding the way certain things work, especially from a financial perspective, but also having those ready-made networks where your mother or your father can introduce you to, oh, I know the buyer at Neiman Marcus, for instance, I don't know, and I can connect you to them. Some people have those ready-made networks and others don't. Another of the challenges, as I sort of alluded to earlier, is that financial awareness and what that means personally, but also what that can mean as a business owner and being able to access funding. I think when you think of a business in a very broad sense, you always think, oh, well, to do this thing, I really need money. I need to be able to buy stock, or I need to be able to buy a premises, or I need to be able to buy equipment. And that's kind of probably one of the first things that people start to think about. But then there's also the backdrop of that, of it's not, some of these things aren't just there available for you to just take, unfortunately. So it's thinking about ways that you can be, thinking about the sort of lean startup model, I guess, and just thinking how can we still achieve a similar result without having to massively invest a whole lot in the beginning. And I think when it comes to some of the challenges that small businesses might face when thinking about, I guess, dealing with a bank, I think from both sides, there needs to be more work to demystify what a bank actually does and what it means from a perspective, because I think there are a lot of assumptions made sometimes, but both very positive and very negative. The one assumption, for instance, would be that banks don't want to help anybody. And I think that also ties in sometimes to cultural presumptions. Like even a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting down with my granddad, and I've worked for a bank now for almost 10 years. And he was saying to me, don't ever borrow money. If you want something, you save money and then you buy it outright. You don't ever borrow. And so for a lot of people, borrowing money is viewed as a very bad thing.
But Sharniya, that was the culture of the generation. Our parents grew up on cash. They saved for everything they did. They did not use credit cards or borrowed money for anything apart from the house they bought. That was it.
No, exactly. And so I think sometimes that, as much as we do change as we grow, but I think some of these things are still instilled in us, and we still have that negativity of, oh no, banks are big bad places, we can't go to them. And I guess what I would always say is having that attitude of, maybe there's something about this that I don't understand, and actually what I need to do is improve my own understanding, and going and having that initial conversation, because having a conversation doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't mean that you walk into a bank and you're going to have to apply for loads of debt. But then I guess on the other side is people sometimes approach a bank with the view of, the bank has money, the bank's there, so I'm going to go and get money. And I think it's just that figuring out when the right time is for your business to do that. But I guess with the backdrop of Corona, some of the challenges are not being able to access things as easily as we could before. Although using sort of, I guess, a digital model, it means that in some ways things are easier to access, but it can feel like a bit more of a barrier, because it is nice to be able to go somewhere, to go and sit down in front of someone, to have that face-to-face conversation.
No, that's true. The face-to-face does help. But one of the reasons why driving this, and talking about that, how businesses can grow in the next 90 days, we're in the countdown to Christmas right now, and it's not just Christmas. We're in the countdown to, was it Black Monday? Black Monday, and what's the Friday called?
Isn't it Black Friday?
It's Black Friday.
Black every day.
Black every day. But in November, sales start to be driven by companies, and Christmas is also a high time as well. And so what you're trying to encourage businesses to do now is not to sit back and think, we're in the middle of the pandemic, everything is slow, so just give up. You're trying to find ways that you can still drive and pedal and get stuff out there in front of people, just to survive. What do you think?
No, definitely. I think it's now probably more important than ever for us or for businesses, but for us to be thinking about, how do we communicate? How do we still drive that value? And I think one of the things the pandemic has taught us is that consumer trends can change very, very quickly. This has forced us to change really quickly, and it's forced a lot of people to do things in ways they didn't previously. For instance, the high street was a place where people would go to shops. It was very buzzing. And then obviously during the lockdown, we weren't able to do that. So it showed that Amazon, I can't remember the exact number, but Amazon sales increased loads, and businesses that were sort of digitally enabled, they saw a massive boom at that time.
Everywhere I looked, I saw a grey Amazon van. I couldn't miss every corner you turned. You thought, man, these are the only guys doing business anywhere.
Exactly. And that's how it felt. And I think what it's shown us is that during that period, businesses that were sort of able to pivot very quickly or diversify very quickly were the ones that were starting to thrive. And unfortunately, businesses that were kind of stuck in that static, were not able to pivot that quickly, weren't necessarily as able to keep going as other businesses were. So I think that, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know that it's natural for us to be super change ready all the time. Although I have met some people who absolutely love that. I hold my hands up. I like change when it's controlled change. I don't like change when it's just like thrust on me and I haven't got a plan in my head. But I think what we all need to take from this is actually being able to think quickly, to be change ready, to adapt quickly is a positive. I also think being really in touch with your customers is one of the best things any business can do. We talk about the fact that when you want to sell, it's not about thinking about the sale, but thinking about building relationships. And I think if you have a really great relationship with your customers, or as positive a relationship as you can, if you're able to then reach out to them and say, okay, what is it you need from me? How can I support you? That can really help to inform keeping that relationship going and keeping that touch point, so that you know what you're doing is serving them and what you're doing isn't. And I would say the other strategy that I would really heavily promote, and I think so many businesses know this as a concept, but it's easy to
before you go to
the sorry, I'm so excited.
Before you go to the strategy, you used the word pivot in just a while ago, very frequently just then. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by businesses were able to pivot? What do you mean by that?
So I guess, whenever I hear the word pivot, I always think of Ross Geller and Friends when he's like, pivot. But businesses being able to pivot is thinking about what is your business model? Is it working? And if something happens that means that you have to change something within your business quite quickly, are you able to do that? Are you able to sort of change the business model? Are you able to change I don't know, for instance, you might have certain stock lines and one's not working. Are you able to quickly change to something else and actually service what it is your customer needs? I have a colleague who constantly says this, but he always says, fall in love with your customer's problem, not your solution to it. And that's really a way of saying you have a business, and of course your business is your baby and you're going to love it, but don't get stuck on this is what my business is, because once your customer changes, it may be that actually your business needs to change slightly to still service the needs of your customer.
So focus on the problem. Focus on the problem. Mm-hmm. And not get your head stuck in your solution that you think is the answer to everything, and then you miss the changing needs of your customer.
Exactly.
Changing needs of your economy. That is so true. But let's look at this also in the context. This is an honored moment because this is the 1st of October and it's Black History Month. Hey, Black History Month. What does Black History Month mean to you?
So to me, it's an opportunity, not even an opportunity, because I think we should be very aware of our history just throughout our lives. By virtue of being Black, it just means that we are very aware of the history, the barriers that we may currently face, and just what it means for our cultures, what it means to be Black, to have that very rich, exciting culture. But I think Black History Month feels like an honor because it's that time of year that we sit and we reflect and we think about who are our role models, who do we celebrate, who are the future sort of inspiring role models, who in the past has fought so hard to get us to where we are today. Obviously, being Black for so long was perceived as a negative. And I think throughout the past however many years, that now that we are at this stage where we're like, actually, no, being Black is so wonderful and our heritage is so rich and we have so many great things to celebrate and so many great things about ourselves, and just that feeling of I am Black and I'm proud, to quote an oft used phrase.
I'm Black and I'm proud.
Exactly.
That's amazing. I'm Black and I'm proud. I was listening to a lady speak this week on television, and she was talking about the fact of our education system not having enough of our Black history inside the school. So children are spending years and years in school learning, but not learning anything about what happened to their people, not learning Black history in any shape or form. So there's a total lack of appreciation of a set of people sitting beside you in the classroom.
No.
I mean, and what do you think? What do you think about that?
I completely agree. So when I was young, my dad and mum sent me to an African consciousness school. So every Saturday I would go for a few hours. I'd love to tell you what it was called, but it was when I was very young, so I can't remember exactly. But every Saturday for a few hours, I would go and learn about all of these amazing historical figures, your Marcus Garveys, oh gosh, see now I'm forgetting the names of people. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, people like that, Harriet Tubman. And at the time, I don't think I necessarily appreciated it or really thought that much about it. It was just something that my parents wanted me to do. And I've always had, I guess, an interest in history. So I found it interesting, but I didn't really think about it that much. And it probably didn't even really hit me until after I left school that I was like, hang on a sec, I've learned all about the Cold War, which happened in America. I've learned about the World War One and World War Two, but you don't learn about the full history and also the history of Black British people in the UK. And I think there's this concept that people only came over during Windrush when actually, yes, okay, we were the minority, but even then, but people were here before that. And even before that, it would be interesting to learn more about African history and actually pre-slavery, what people like the rich history and the concepts of how people were living and what that means for our culture today. Because I think a lot of things that we take for granted culturally are rooted in this history. And I think some people don't even understand that. And I think it would be really positive, especially for Black people, to learn more about Black history, but also for people from other heritages to learn more about how the world has informed today and not just learn about World War I and World War II.
You are so right, because Black people have been here before Windrush. Pre-slavery, there were Black people here working, and it wasn't just poor Black people as well. So there is something there that we're missing. There's a part of the jigsaw that's missing from our history and missing from our identity in this country. And I think it's something that we probably need to start exploring a bit more. In the context of how we develop ourselves. Very recently, I've been talking about the work of Black economics. I interviewed a lady by the name of Dawn Grant, who has a company called Black Economics. But what we were talking about was the work of Black economics in the sense of building Black people, building businesses, building enterprise, building and somehow finding their way in the British economy to identify as a group of people that have an economic contribution to make. What's your view on that?
Well, no, we certainly do have an economic contribution to make, and we not even that we do have one. We make a massive economic contribution. Recently, there was a report released by CREM, the Centre for Research into Ethnic Minority Entrepreneurship, based in Aston Business School, and Black, Asian and minority ethnic businesses alone contribute, I think it's something like 25 billion to the UK's gross value added. And Lydia and Moa also released a report. I'm going to get this. Forgive me, especially Lydia, if you see this. I think it was in 2016, but essentially a report around the Black pound, the spending power of Black people within the UK. And again, forgive me if I get the numbers wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was something like 300 million will contribute, Black people contribute to the UK economy. And obviously, just as a group of people, there's so many places, well, everybody spends, but there's so many places that we spend and so many ways that we contribute and add value. And I think as well, we definitely need to, obviously it's Black Pound Day on Saturday. And I think I'm trying to be more conscious about making that effort and that choice to spend within Black communities, because I also read another stat that talked about within certain communities, and again I'm going to make up the figures, but the concept is the same, is that within sort of the Jewish community, the Jewish pound as it were will stay in the community for like up to 60 days. Within Asian communities, the Asian pound for like a minimum of 2 weeks. And in the Black communities, our Black pound stays within Black communities for, I think, something like less than 6 hours. And when you think about communities coming
Less
together,
than 6 hours, the pound stays within our community.
it's not even a whole day. It's really short. But I guess when we think about the way we live and where we are, and that we can be quite spread out and dispersed, it makes sense. But it is a shame that as a community, it would be really nice if we were more.
You could churn a bit more, just churn with more.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is the supply of services, that the basic services that we need every day. We are unable to find small businesses from our community that can serve those needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a bit of a wild concept, I guess. But I also was reading about post-slavery and being abolished in America, and there was an area in New York called Seneca Village, and essentially it was a black area, and within it, obviously, all of the Black people lived there, and they had their own churches, funeral homes, banks, shops. Everything was Black owned, and this is probably going to sound a bit out there, but it was almost like segregation was actually quite positive for the Black community, because everybody was only allowed to live in this area. Financially, they thrived until, unfortunately, certain people got wind of the fact that they were thriving, didn't like it, and burnt the whole place down. And that area called Seneca Village is now what you would know as Central Park in New York. And I remember reading that and just being really upset, shocked, gutted. But it did make me think, actually, it shows you how powerful we can be when we do make that effort to come together and be together. And fair enough, it was thrust upon them, but they were thriving.
Wow, that's amazing. They were thriving as a community.
Mm-hmm.
There were some people out there who didn't like thriving. So it doesn't mean, so not everyone likes the idea of a group of people thriving.
They definitely don't, and they definitely didn't. And this, I won't go down the roots of the history of white supremacy, but I guess at that, I'm not saying like there wouldn't be issues now, but I think if something like that were to happen now, it wouldn't be as easily dismantled.
We wouldn't tolerate it. I don't think so.
No.
Wow. So what are some of the things that you think that we could do now in 2020 that would help us prepare for Christmas, for the Christmas explosion? I mean, okay, it may not happen like it used to happen before, but people at home, they're sitting there, they're still going to shop. Mm-hmm. People still shop. They're still going to celebrate Christmas. They're still going to cook meals. They're still going to do something. Mm-hmm. So, as businesses, what do you think we can do just to prepare for that?
Well, I think that, again, at the beginning of the lockdown, what we saw was that businesses were looking at, especially some business owners, weren't just thinking about how do I make money, because it was like they were potentially in a situation where it wasn't that straightforward. So they were thinking more about, how do I add value to my customers? So I'll use the example of all of the gyms started doing at-home workouts and offering people that service of, you can work out at your home still. And what that does is, if you're there for people when it's kind of like impossible for them to get to you, they remember you when they're in a better position. And now people have, well, I think they've flocked back to the gym. Maybe not flocked, but people have started going back to their gym. So I would say for business owners to think about, how do you add value to your customers during this time so that you stay in their minds? I would say definitely looking at digital adoption or your digital offering, because if we do go into a proper second lockdown, although hopefully we don't, it will mean that you'll need to think about your routes to your customer and how does your customer communicate with you, but equally, how do you get your product or service to your customer? So I think things like that really need to be thought about as well in advance, because as you said, people are still going to spend, and actually people are probably going to spend more. So the easier you make it for them to get to you and to spend to you and to then get your product to them, the more that they are probably going to spend with you as well. And maybe just think about some little extra added special touches that you can offer that may not be too hard or onerous for you to do. But the fact that it is coming up to Christmas and we're still in this stage of not being 100% sure if Christmas is cancelled or not. If you can do something that will make your customers smile, they'll remember you. And actually, sorry, just a quick example. So I think it was in August, I bought some cards which have been designed by a company called Cinnamon Cards, which are black designs on cards, really lovely. And I ordered a few cards because I'm always like, oh, actually, if I buy ahead, then I won't forget people's birthdays. And when they sent me the cards, because I bought so many, one, they gave me an extra card for free, which I just thought was really lovely. But they also put in a few sweets in the box. And that just makes me remember them. And now I'm talking about them on this platform. So everyone, go buy some black design cards from Cinnamon Cards.
Amazing. Adding a special touch to what you deliver, adding a special touch to your offerings to the community makes such a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, she says now she's promoting the cards. and I think women more than men tend to, when they find something they like and love, they tell everybody.
Yes.
They tell everybody. They don't hold back on promoting. They don't hold back on sharing. So guys, remember that. Now, I want to ask you another question about how are the banks helping in this crisis? But before we go there, I want to just go to our sponsor. You are listening to the Message Talk Show and podcast. Do you believe you have something to share? Do you believe you have something to contribute? Do you have a story to tell the world, to share with your community? Gandhi said, man often becomes what he believes himself to be. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So join us on the Message Talk Show and podcast with host Alex Gordon. Hey, so now that we come back from our break, what are the banks doing to help us in this crisis? What are some of the things the banks doing to help in this crisis?
So some of the things the banks have done, and I'll also talk as well from an external, but maybe also from an internal perspective, is, well, obviously the government support around the C bills, so coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, and the B bills, the bounce back loans scheme, had to be implemented via the banks. And this kind of scheme, I don't think has ever been seen before. And it's, again, not something that I ever would have imagined had happened. And from a bank perspective, we have been lending a lot more and in a very much shorter period of time than we ever would have before. So it has been a case of trying to work through that as quickly as possible and provide what needed money to as many people as possible as quickly as possible. It hasn't been necessarily the easiest journey, and I know that for some customers it hasn't always been the easiest, but in terms of the fact that this was a massive just shock and disruptor to absolutely everybody, it has been interesting to see how quickly banks have been able to adapt to putting up a new scheme, because normally that kind of scheme wouldn't be done so quickly. And it was announced on a Monday and it had to be implemented by the following Monday. That I don't know if people appreciate this, but especially for a large organization, that is a very quick amount of time. But in other ways, I think just that keeping branches open and branch staff, we in the bank, a lot of us have been are still, this is my home, you're in my house with me now, a lot of us are working from home, but our staff who work in branches and in personal banking have still been going in and kind of trying to support customers the best they can. So I have a lot of massive respect for people, especially working in branch banking, for being able to do that and going in and still trying to support as much as they can. We've also, I guess, from a business perspective, we have our Entrepreneur Accelerator program. Obviously, the role I did was facilitating sort of networking events and bringing communities together. We've massively upped our digital offering. We have our Business Builder program, which is part of our overall Entrepreneur Accelerator, which is for businesses. It offers digital events, an online portal which has information for learning modules for customers, and also offers that digital community via Facebook. So it's still giving people the opportunity to be able to connect with each other and share their learnings as they would. Our other teams have still been running webinars. Our mentor platform, which is a platform that's designed specifically around supporting people with HR and employment law offers, they very quickly adapted to offering information sessions, and they're actually going live again. I think it might be today. We are offering our we have a service called Till, which is essentially like a digital card service. We're offering that to customers for free at the moment. So I think for me, it's that wraparound digital offering that has really, really been strengthened and has moved very quickly, and a lot quicker than it would have prior to the impacts of coronavirus.
So going digital, there's no excuse for not going digital.
I mean, for some businesses, it may be impossible, but yeah, it's the more that you can offer digitally, I'd say the better, especially moving forward into the future world.
Yeah, but it may be impossible for some business to go digital because of the nature of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But by virtue of having a digital presence, a digital footprint, everybody can have a digital footprint.
No, definitely. And I think even if it's just a case of, actually, maybe I need to start thinking about communicating with my customers via social media or looking at what I can offer digitally to my customers, it's definitely something that I think people need to consider, because this has accelerated what we all knew was coming, that we would be using digital means more and more. This has accelerated it, and it's only going to, I think, keep moving forwards of being more digitally enabled.
Well, an example of that was the restaurant that I like going to. Well, my wife liked going to this restaurant. I go as well. Likes going to this restaurant, and the lockdown really hit them. And I said to them, don't you collect the email addresses or phone numbers of your customers? Because if you'd collected all their emails and phone numbers, the minute that there was the ease was the government eased they introduced that scheme to say come in and 50%, you could have emailed all your customers and scheduled them in,
mm-hmm.
just to make sure that people got some time in there to come and eat and relax in the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't have anything in place, and even though I was talking to them, they were still looking at me thinking, well, that's a lot of work. I'm thinking,
this is the thing, sometimes it's a work in the beginning, but once you've done it, it's always there, and then it's not work anymore. And I think people need to kind of assess that of, is it work now but it will be easier later, or is it really hard work now and it'll be really hard work forever? And if that's the case, I understand, but a lot of the times with digital, it makes it so much easier in the long run.
The difference is investment. If you don't talk about work, it's an investment. The return will come eventually.
Exactly.
You'll hang on to the customers that stay loyal to you.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've been out. Sorry, carry on.
No, go on.
I was going to say, I don't know if you've been out recently, but I've been out to a few restaurants, and they're now doing you scan the QR code and order that way. And what that does for businesses, which never did before, is you always have to input your information. So they now have even more data where they will have customers' email addresses, customers' names, if they want to go really down that line, but they'll have things where they'll see what their customer has ordered. And from that, they can send special offers to customers based on, oh, this customer came in for drinks, we're doing a drinks offer. And so it's thinking about those ways of, how do I really get to know my customer and how do I add value to them? It brings us back to that point.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I've got a question here from the public, and it says, who inspires you as a woman? Who inspires you?
Gosh, so many people. So it's hard to narrow that down.
Well, don't give us all 150 or 200 right now. Yeah,
I'll try not to. I'm going to go for a really obvious one, but you know what? I do find her really, really inspiring, and I'll tell you why. So, Oprah Winfrey is incredible, and I don't think anyone ever debates that or questions that. But I just think about knowing her story, knowing where she started, knowing the adversities that she went through, and to overcome that. But then not only to overcome that, but then to thrive and go on to do everything she's done. And from what I know of her, like being so giving and so kind to people as well, I don't know, it's just really inspiring. Like, I don't even think I'm that kind, and I haven't been through half as much. So I just think if you can go through something like that and still then be thinking about how do I support others, how do I give back, I just find people like that really, really humbling and wanting to make me up my game and do even more.
Wow. So you're not as kind as Oprah Winfrey, no?
Well, probably don't have the resources to be quite as kind. I'll be giving out cars to everyone.
Yes, she's able to give presents to the public, the audience.
I'll send out cards, my cinnamon cards, not cards.
And the next question is, who are you mentoring?
So I am one of these people that I am in touch. So I don't have what I would say is like a formal mentoring partnership, but I do actually speak to quite a lot of people, or sort of, I'd say, people within the organization who are more junior, who while it's not official formal mentoring, we do have mentoring style conversations. And there are also a couple of business owners that I've met along the way that every so often I'll regularly sort of touch base with them and have those sort of conversations of what are you up to, where are you going next, what support do you need. So there are quite a few people that I would say I'm unofficially mentoring, but I always think that there's more I can do. And whenever I see mentoring opportunities, I always put my hands up to get involved.
Well, I am sure, because the event I saw you at 3 years ago, that event was built around mentoring, because you're one of the stars in that show there. You know, you're one of the stars, you know, which
You're
also, I need to go and interview this lady. I think I've got a clip here. I'm going to try and play this clip. Do you mind? Let me try and play.
Fine. I'm just worried about like what I look like then.
All right, let me just try and play this clip from then. Women with Success, the National Black Women's Network, and I have with me a young lady who spoke earlier today. Tell us your name, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Sharniya Ferdinand. I work for NatWest. We partners with the National Black Women's Network. I work in business banking, and we support small businesses in various ways. But in particular, my role does is I host free to attend networking events for businesses and open events apparently as well, which I did today.
Did you hear that, guys? Free to attend networking events across London. So if you stay connected, you get an invite. Yes, am I right?
That's very true.
Now, when you were speaking today, you made specific reference to the Nancy stories.
Yeah.
Tell us where that came from.
I'm Caribbean, and growing up in a Caribbean family, I think it's just something that we all grew up with. But then my mom, I remember in particular, bought me, I can't remember what the book's called, but it must have been the Book of Tales of Anansi or something along those lines. But she bought me a collection of short stories which were all around Anansi the spy.
Hey, let me stop it there, because the Anansi story. Now, we can't miss that one. Tell us about the Anansi stories.
Gosh, I wish I could remember. It was 3 years ago. I'm old, you know. My memory's not what it was. I think it was wasn't it something to do? Oh gosh, something to do with Anansi meeting a snake, and then the snake. Anansi bet the snake that he was as bigger than the log, or something like that. Because Anansi's I don't know if everybody knows about Anansi, but he's the Spider-Man, or he's also a demigod, and he's a trickster god. And he hails from sort of West Africa. So I think it's a Ghanaian legend. But obviously that was then brought over to the Caribbean through the transatlantic slave trade. And so he'd always like play tricks on his friends and try and outsmart everybody was his kind of thing. And in this particular story that I told, it was something to do with he'd met a snake and bet the snake that he wasn't as long as the log, but the snake, being all arrogant, was like, yes, I am. And then Nancy was like, okay, what I'll do is I'll tie you to the log. So we can, and then you stretch as high as you can go, and we can see if you're as long as the log. And I really don't remember the conclusion. I just remember he ends up tying the snake to the log, but I don't know if he then like probably throws the snake down a well or something, because that's the kind of thing a Nancy would do. If anybody reads it, like goes and finds that story, please do let me know the ending. In fact, I'm going to go Google it myself because I can't remember. But I think I was just trying to compare it to trying as hard as you can to get to where you want to go, something like that.
Wow. See, you did remember. You did remember. Now, we're time has just disappeared so much, and we're coming to the top of the program. Now, as someone who's operating on both sides, someone who's small businesses, someone who see what's going on out in the community, and you're helping to help shape the assistance that's been given. What was the one advice you'd give the community right now? Small businesses, people starting up, people in the middle of the business, crying out for help, crying out for cash flow. What's the advice you'd give now?
I think the advice I would give, and it's something that's benefited me, but also I know massively benefits business, is you can never underestimate the power of a really strong network. I think really focus on building relationships, because these relationships you build now, you don't know 4 years down the line, you might need a podcast and reach out and to join the podcast. No, but in all seriousness, I think the more people you know and the more people you can connect with and support yourself, because there is also a value in a like a social value in being able to give back, but equally from that creates that I guess what people would term as social capital. And the more people that you're able to connect with and know and have within your network and your arsenal, the more support and help you will have yourself. And we talk about this concept of community, but realistically, I'm going to use the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village, I think, to start and grow a business. And so I think don't underestimate the value of knowing as many people as you can and getting to know as many people as you can.
Knowing as many people as you can, getting to knowing people, getting to network events, getting your name out there, getting your presence out there, getting your digital footprint out there. Wow. There is so much you can do. Sharniya, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You have been a great inspiration today. And I'm sure people have got so much from you, so much from you. And if I could project into the future and ask, what do you think, what would you like to see happen in the next 5 years? Okay, we've overcome the pandemic, all right? So let's get that out of the way. Let's get that out, right? We're learning to live. What do you hope to see in our country in the next 5 years?
Well, I was going to say, I hope that we're allowed to leave our houses, but aside from that, I would like to see more of us coming together to create solutions to some of the problems that we as a society have just accepted that's the way the world is, when that's not the way the world has to be. I think more focus on how we can enable social mobility, opening up networks for more of us to learn from different experiences from people. But equally, I would also love to see more minds coming together to think about how do we, in a positive and a realistic way, address the growing climate crisis. I think things like this, like creating equality, climate crisis, thinking about just creating a more fair and equal society so that our children and our children's children can really thrive. That's what I'd like to see in the next 5 years, more discussions around how to create more positivity and not focusing so much on negativity.
Wow. Amazing, Sharniya. I'll be saying, man, you should be stepping into politics in the next 5 years, mate.
Don't.
Drive
it's been suggested, but I don't know. We'll see. Call me in 5 years.
we should be getting you out there to run campaigns and to shift people's minds, and influence. Thank you for coming on the show today, Sharniya. Thank you guys for tuning into the Message Talk Show today with Sharniya Ferdinand. She's been inspiring us, she's encouraging us to get ourselves out there, to not give up in the situation. It doesn't matter what we face. We have one life to live and we've got to give it the best we can. And together, it takes a village to grow a child, but it also takes a village to grow a business. That's coming from Sharniya. She said it takes a village to grow a business. So you need to build community at all the times. You need to be networking. You need to be talking to people. And I'm thanking you for coming on the Message Talk Show. And hey, if you want to get your name out there, if you want to speak, if you want to tune into something great on Thursday, 11 o'clock, tune into the Message Talk Show with host Alex Gordon. And I'm tuning out with one of my best shots. miss the show, you got to be on the show.